Who are you and why are we interviewing?
It's good to see you, Quincy. Right now, I'm an old guy. I'm 72 and I quit the official corporate world when I was 59. For whatever reason, I've developed a following of people who call me on a regular basis or semi-regular basis, and they ask me business questions. So I've been doing that, however you call that, for a long time, 15 or 20 years. Even when I was employed, I spent a lot of time with younger people who were coming into the business world.
What field was your profession?
I would say marketing, sales and marketing. What I was an idea person and kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, even though I can't spell it. And I was very much a salesperson.
So when you were, quote unquote, in the game, how did you advise companies in your role at the end of your career?
When I became the CEO, when I didn't have to stand outside the door hoping I would be invited in, when I was in, I made sure that door was open. Every time I was there, that door was open. Now, if you're going to come into my office, come on in. You better have a good question, you better have a time frame, and you better get to it quick, and you're welcome, and then we'll set it up if we can't answer it.
For that young professional between 25 and 35, what's the importance of mentoring, and how would someone go about finding a mentor?
So what a mentor in a business is going to say, it's not wonderful things, it's helpful, critical, and sometimes hard to digest advice. The mentor comes to the mentoree. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work the other way. Mm-hmm. Not to be effective, not in my opinion. But if you're a young person coming in, you might say, after you've been there a while, I got about 8 questions. And they're not just, how does this machine or this these are more kind of complex. So the young person says, who have I met, who have I seen that really seems to be willing to discuss and experience enough to, and then you, the young person, has to go to that person and say, can I buy you a coffee or a lunch? I got 7 questions. So the decision comes on the other side, not the young person.
Someone who has reached the pinnacle of success, walked away on top, have the network of friends that still care and love you and are willing to reach out and ask for your mentorship and with your mentees. Why are you sitting in that chair? Why are we going through all of this?
So now I'm on the other side. If somebody comes up and says, hey, Gary, just real quick. If this happens, what would you do? Let's make it simple. What are we trying to do here? When is it due and who's paying? And I had a really good friend who was exceptionally well known in the baseball world, Hall of Fame, and millions of other things. And when I asked him why he kept going back to his old team, and he was older than me, just died. And why do you work with these young kids coming up? He said, because it's who I am and what I did. He said, I just know how to field a ground ball and how to set myself. If you don't ask, I don't care. If you ask, why wouldn't I tell you that? If you ask me a question, I'll tell you a story that's true, and this is what happened, and this is what I did. Now, what you want to do, how much of that you want to apply, that's up to you. But if you didn't know that, you lose. It's like, if you go into, we've never played football on this field against these people, and everybody gets the uniform and comes and stands on the field. If they just had somebody say, whoa, before you walk out there, this is how the crowd reacts here. The field is sloped on the west side. Okay, the referees don't speak English, so don't try to talk to them. And do not carry your helmets. It means that you hate people. Put your helmets on. Go get them. Well, I'm carrying my helmet. Well, that's up to you. I don't want anybody to try to do what I did or say or act. Not at all. okay? I was unusual. I'm a misfit. If you're a misfit, what makes you unusual? What's different about you? And there's so much. The education, and not good looking, foul mouth, that's the key. Why are you doing this? What makes you different? And did you like doing what you're doing? Was this fun or funny?
Did you enjoy it?
Oh man, I didn't enjoy it. I loved it. This is like I was in a movie that I never wanted it to end. I've never met anybody like Tracy Brown in my life, and as you know, I'm old. Currently, she's the CEO of the American Diabetes Association, but I knew her when she was the Senior VP of Operations and Chief Experience Officer at Sam's Club. But I met her when she was a Managing Director for Rap Dallas. She's a very high energy, people-oriented, unbelievable person. How'd you end up in marketing?
How did I end up in marketing? I started out having a passion for solving problems with engineering, and I went to go work for Procter & Gamble right out of school as a engineer doing product development, developing soaps and detergents. And while I was in that job, discovered through a mentor that I had a knack for consumer insights and product positioning. And so my mentor said, have you ever thought about going on the brand or the marketing side of the organization? Because it would be really good to have someone who knows how to create our products on the side that are marketing our products, not over-promising a bunch of stuff. I was like, no, I had never thought about it. He said, go shadow a brand manager. And so that's what I did. And that's how my kind of love for marketing actually started.
There are classically, back in my day, if you were in marketing, you would be on the client side or you were on the agency side. And you've heard these terms before. You've been on both sides. How would you define, if you're going to be on the client side as a young person coming into marketing, what would your personality or mental process be versus the agency side?
I love the fact that I've had both experiences. If I think about the agency side, I kind of think of it as being dunked into the deep end of the pool. And you get a lot of exposure, a lot of experience fast, a lot of cross-industry experience fast. What I think about the client side is it allows you to actually go deeper on the brand or a set of brands. And it actually allows you to go from inception through execution, which is one of the reasons why I moved to the client side, is because I loved coming up with all of these great concepts, marketing strategies and the like, and then never saw the execution of it. And so on the client side, you get to see from start to finish.
I always say, if you're on the client side, you're an adult. You're intelligent. You follow the rules. I'm not saying you have a boring life, but what you think is exciting is pretty boring. And I always say, if you're on the agency side, you're nuts, because it's just run and gun. It's like putting on a show. You're constantly in the agency side. Somebody's singing, somebody's like trying to get plants behind the curtain, and somebody's like out there collecting money. So I always thought, I knew you later, and then I knew you well. I always thought you were an adult. I just didn't know why you were even in the agency business.
I love the agency business because of the run and gun, Gary. I am a full throttle all day, every day. And it is kind of crazy in the agency world. And I think it appealed to my problem solver. Like, you're solving problems like across the large variety of industries, clients, and all of those things. And so I liked it for that. I have found my greatest success on the client side, though, has been as a change maker, disruptor, turnaround. I mean, so if you look at the client side experience that I've had over the last several years, it really has all been either transforming or swimming upstream to drive some kind of change. And I think that's a nice blend between the crazy of the agency world and the adulthood, as you say, on the client side.
What were your challenges and how did you overcome them in the business world?
My early challenges, I think, Gary, in the business world goes back to my time at Procter and Gamble, right? Like, so you're a chemical engineer, and then you decide you want to take over to marketing. That's incongruent, and that's not the normal path. And so your point about working hard and outworking, I don't know. There are very few people that are going to outwork me. That's one. Two, the higher and higher that I went into my career, Gary, I think if you look around the C-suite, if you look around boardrooms, they are still lacking people of color, and they are still lacking women. And so that's a very real thing even today. And the way that I have navigated those challenges has been really more of, again, results. So that's the base. Like, you've got to be able to drive and show that you can drive results. But I think the other thing that has been successful in helping me overcome hurdles is this whole notion of trying to showcase that diversity actually leads to a better result. Diversity can help you actually solve complex problems. And I think the way that you do that is you have to be one that has an open aperture to listen, to learn, and try and understand another's perspective. But you also have to be willing to be a teacher to help other people understand the shoes that you have walked. And I have found that has served me well, not only as I moved up through the ranks of Walmart, but even now in my CEO role at the ADA, and all the constituents that I am working with here. But even in, I serve on a couple of for-profit boards where I'm the minority, in a sense, from a person of color and a woman. And so, you got to extend olive branches. You got to be willing to learn, and you got to be willing to teach and mentor.
When did you know you were successful? Because, and I'll give you what you deserve, you had an incredible collegiate career in sports. You could have just checked out and been very successful at some bar, some way, talking to people every day. And I would have liked that. You had an incredible marketing career. I mean, you really, it's still going, but if it was a standalone marketing career and you were at the top at being a CEO, and there's nothing but positives. And you have a wonderful family, and you're very religious, which I can say without hesitation, I think is wonderful. But how do you do that? And it's a loaded question. Which memory is the most important to you? If you said, I'm successful, and the first thing I think about is what?
Yeah, so I have a philosophy that I follow now, Gary, that I didn't actually follow in the early part of my career. Is that I think I talk about my rings, and you have to have your rings in order. I have my rings out of order. So for me, success now is making sure that I try to stay in alignment with God's purpose for my life. That's ring one. And a part of staying in alignment also means that I'm actually feeding and watering myself. Ring number two is my family and making sure that I am feeding and watering and being there for my family. And then ring number three is work. For the first probably half of my career, Gary, I had those out of order. It went work, 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 and more work and more work. In fact, I delayed getting married because I thought that was a distraction from me achieving whatever I thought was success at the time. I delayed having my daughter. I had my daughter late. I didn't have my daughter until I was 37 because I thought it was a distraction in terms of achieving whatever success was. And then it was after, honestly, my experience at a company called Direct Impact in Austin, where I was chief operating officer there, that I recognized I didn't feel 100% fulfilled. And so I just went on this kind of path of self-discovery to really discover that I had my rings out of order. And then when I got my rings in order and I keep them in order, that's when good things happen. And what I mean by good things happen, I mean, that outsiders may say you've been successful and you've achieved and da da da. But good things happen, meaning when purpose meets passion meets position. And that is what success for me ultimately looks like, is when I can keep all of those things in alignment.
One word that I hate is busy. When I was young and coming up, I would say, well, I'd really like to talk to this person who had a bigger position or could answer a question. They'd say, you have no idea how busy this person is. And my reaction was, I don't get people. How can you be too busy for me? As long as you can make it quick and accurate, I got time for you. Are you busy where you work? Are you hard to get a hold of?
I'm not. And people say, why do you let so many people have access to you? Why do you talk to so many people? Blah, blah, blah. But really, Gary, this is a Garyism for real and for truth. So many people that are important to me, or people that have mentored me or helped me along the way, including yourself, also talk about you and how you've helped them, and just extending the reach. You always do have time for people. I think that's something that I've actually tried to model and emulate. Even today, I had a conversation with a new employee today who said, I can't believe that the CEO made time for me. And I'm like, of course I made time for you, right? You're a new employee. Employees are our best competitive advantage. And by the way, I can learn. Like you're fresh, not jaded, not into this. Like I can learn from you.
That's right.
I met Susan Smith Ellis a long time ago when she was the exec VP of Omnicom Group out of New York City. She was the #1 woman at the time in the world's largest marketing and advertising company, Omnicom. She's amazing. She left there at Bono's request to be the first CEO of Red. She has also been the exec VP at BBDO and a senior executive at Hill Holliday. She's an advertising icon.
How did your career start? How did you even get into marketing?
Well, so I actually wanted to be a book editor. I wanted to be in book publishing. And I had a master plan for that, which was I was going to become an editorial assistant and then, find the great American novelist and wine and dine them in New York. I had this idea that working was pretty much going out to lunch with fabulous authors. And and I had a plan. I thought, well, I can do this, and then I can have children, and then I can step away and freelance edit, and then I can go back into the business. I had this sort of all worked out. And I did, in fact, get a job in book publishing. but I didn't, I didn't really gravitate to it. I mean, it was fine. I liked it enough. I liked the people in it, but you weren't paid very well. It was really pretty. You worked hard for not much compensation, and moving along was slow. You didn't get promoted quickly, and I'm a restless soul. I didn't know that then, but looking back, I think I'm a restless soul. So I was frustrated by the pace of that business, and it happened that friend of mine and I rented a house at Cape Cod, and we were talking about our careers. And she said, I know this guy named Jack Connors, and he has a small agency in Boston called Hill Holiday. And maybe you should go talk to them. Maybe you're more suited to a faster paced business. And so I met him, and I interviewed there for months and months and months. They kept sending me off to meet someone else in the company, and someone else in the company, and someone else in the company. And mostly these men all said things to me like, well, you seem perfectly lovely, but you've been in book publishing all of 4 years, by the way. You've been in book publishing for a while, and I just don't really see how you could make that transition. Or, you seem nice, but I don't really see what you'd ever do in Adland. And I think in some weird way, the more that they said I wouldn't be able to get a job there, the more I wanted it. I mean, Hill Holiday it was young, and I think they were probably only doing maybe $40 million in billing, but it had this energy when you sat in the lobby waiting for your interviews. It had this electricity. People were buzzing back and forth, and they were attractive and young. And I just thought it seemed, like a place I wanted to be.
Are you a creative person? You can.
Well, no. So honestly, I think if I look back, we're all so genius looking back on our lives. I probably should have gone to the creative side, I should have been an art director. When I was in college in the 70s, women became teachers or, nurses or moms. I mean, no one said, I'm going to go up and be an art director. I was sort of at the time when the women's movement was really just starting to click along, and women were starting to demand a voice. And so I really didn't know that there were a lot of options. And so I finally called Jack Connors up and said, look, I've interviewed every single person in your company practically. Do you have a job or don't you? I don't know where I got the moxie to do that, but I finally was just sick of interviewing. So he had me come in and he hired me. And my first job there was to be assistant to the president. And what that meant was I worked very closely with a guy named Skip Pyle, who had been assistant to the president. He'd been the media director and then became the assistant to the president. And that job was really to take Skip from media into a broader business role. And so shadowing the two of them and being thrown into whatever was going on was an incredible immersion. And in fact, I had at one point thought about going to business school and getting an MBA. And Connor said to me, if you come here and work for a year. And if you don't feel like you've gotten enough experience learning about the business of this business and the business of our clients' businesses, then I'll pay for you to go to business school, which was, it was complete BS. I mean, now that knowing him as I have now for all these years, he was a charmer and said these things of the moment. I'm sure he never would have put me through business school, but it didn't matter. I had this great immersion and did crazy things like they would come into my cubicle and say, we need a helicopter. Well, I don't know how to get a helicopter, but guess what? I figured out how to find a helicopter. Then when I found it, they didn't need it. Or take this recording device and go to the ad club breakfast and record Jack's speech. I didn't have a pass. I didn't, have a ticket. I had to talk my way in and then kind of work my way up to the podium with my little tape recorder. And then no one ever listened to it. Like, it was really kind of weird. But I think it was that kind of young person's hazing thing where they just threw you in to see, could you do it? And that eventually led to having more of more concrete assignments. And so I worked with a consulting firm to create a compensation program for the company because they didn't really have any kind of formalized compensation. I worked on building the first budget. There never had been a budget. Basically, Jack went out and got business whenever they needed business. He was such a good salesman. And so we had to build a proper business plan, and I worked on that. And so a lot of it was just hands-on, and one thing led to another.
Jane tells a story that you said one time. I just want to confirm it.
Yeah.
When you got into ugly or awkward situations, or when you were talking to other women who were in awkward or ugly situations, and I'm not going to quote you, but the quote that Jane and I both remember is you saying, why spend time? Just leave, figure out something else to do.
Well, exactly. I mean, again, maybe that's cavalier because I never really felt, I'm sure I know firsthand from friends or secondhand from friends that there were people whose careers were held back because they wouldn't engage with someone or they just, had really sexist bosses. But I never experienced that. And so while, while people said, I mean, I won't repeat any of these things, but when I think about some of the rude things that guys said to me, colleagues, guys that were my friends and colleagues, it just, it was just a different time. And I was never, my view was like, oh, just shut up. It wasn't, it was like I had brothers that you're not frightening me. And I do think that this is probably going to get me in some trouble, but I do think that if we women want to be equal, want to be president, want to be all of those things that men can be with the same pay and whatever and opportunity, you can't also then be a hothouse flower. You sort of have to, I can't be a damsel in distress and want to be the CEO. And
Yeah.
I think you have to fight to change the environment. I think you have to call it out when you see it. But I'm not sure that every little microaggression, as we now see sometimes with some young people, if someone says your hair looks nice, they fall apart. I don't think that's particularly sexist.
But what were the major obstacles? If there were two major obstacles, that sexism wasn't one of them,
Yeah.
what were they?
Well, so again, I think at Hill Holiday, I didn't feel any of that because of the fast pace of the growth. The growth was just, when in the time I was there from 1980 something, 1981 to when I left in 1993 when I was pregnant with my daughter. They went from 40 million to half a billion in billings. So it was just, and they expanded overseas, and then we contracted from being overseas because we lost a big account, and like I saw all that up and down. So I would say that where I think I first experienced, that being a woman wasn't a big asset was maybe at BBDO. There were very few women executives. And it was definitely a boys' club, and they definitely all were friendly. They were pretty tight with one another. I knew a lot of the creative guys because I had tried to recruit some of them when I was at Hill Holiday. But and again, it wasn't anything nasty or overt. It was just a feeling that they were tight with one another, and it was hard to get in. And so I never really. I don't know. I was included in meetings and included with clients and whatever, but I just never felt like I was really going to go anywhere. I felt a little bit like I was the token girl. And I think that was also true at Omnicom. Again, not overtly sexist in any way, and they were perfectly nice to me, but there were a lot of times where I felt like I was pulled into a meeting because I was a woman and they needed one, versus I was pulled into a meeting because I was a valuable contributor, that I was oftentimes a prop.
You were so amazing. At Omnicom, you and I saw each other in different battles. How did you break through and be so listened to? Because honest to God, I never thought of you as a woman. I just thought of you, I really did, as somebody who could get a problem solved and get the ball moving, because I always seem to represent conflict. And you were the opposite. So how did you do that?
I've said this before publicly and privately. I'm a middle child, and I swear to God, I think that when you're a middle child, you're always the one that's kind of getting everybody together and getting people to get along. And I think it's in my personality. I don't like shouting. I don't like conflict. I'm not afraid of conflict, and I'm happy to have conflict. But I'm much more likely to say, if there are warring parties, to get them together and make them talk to each other in my presence, versus hearing this person's problem and that person's problem and trying to solve it myself. I've felt blocked more by women sometimes along the way than by men. And again, I think part of that is back then there were so few of us that people felt covetous of their position and worried that they might lose it. And so I don't begrudge them that. I don't feel like that was horrible, but I kind of understand it. I think the breakthrough for me was sitting down with John Wren and having a real conversation about that I thought I could do more, and that I thought he didn't really know a lot about my background at Hill Holiday and the different things that I'd done. And I mean, I'd gone overseas for them. I'd opened up offices. I'd lived in London and Paris and Sydney and Hong Kong, and I closed offices. I'd done joint ventures. I'd worked on all sorts of kinds of, international business across borders. So sitting down with him and saying, look, I want to put my hand up and I want to do more. His first reaction was, look, you have young children and, you have a pretty good gig here, and why don't you just enjoy enjoy that you're well paid, and it's a pretty nice atmosphere to work in. And he's right. And that was true. It was a great thing, but I again felt that I could do more. And so that's when he, soon thereafter, I would say in the next few months, the Bank of America opportunity came up and he threw me into running that pitch.
I remember. I've been blessed. I have a great partner in life, and it's not just partner, a business partner. Is that important to you, or do you believe in that as much as I do?
Totally. I mean, I think that John, my husband, John Ellis, has been such a great partner, though we didn't meet till I was 36 years old. So I had married young, divorced young. And in some ways, getting divorced enabled me to move all around the world. I mean, it was a great career move. I'm sure it was, it was a little sad moment, but it was good for my career and for my life. But John is incredibly supportive of my career and an incredibly good partner for me to have. I could bounce things off of him. He's so smart. He's so strategic. And we kind of took turns. I mean, when he was writing for the Globe and writing for Fast Company and Wall Street Journal and so on, I took time off and stayed home with our children, which enabled him to really focus on that part of his career. And then when I went back to work at BBDO, we moved from Boston to New York. And he really had to go to Boston sort of once every couple of weeks to check in at the Globe, but he would then wrote his columns from home and made himself available for our kids. So we've had a wonderful marriage, and I think our children benefited from that because they had real relationships with both of us. It wasn't just their dad wasn't some dude that showed up once in a while.
Last question.
Yeah.
Do you realize that I do love you, and I'm not allowed to say that? I can't share that. I can't even write that down.
Of course you can. I mean, I don't see why not. We're friends. And I do think that those are important words that people should express to one another in life.
When people bring up the name Mike Rawlings, especially in the Dallas Metroplex area, you immediately think that he was the mayor of Dallas for 2 terms, 8 years, or that he was the president and CEO of Pizza Hut, or going back, he actually was the CEO of Tracy Locke. When I think of Mike Rawlings, I think of a big guy who tries desperately not to laugh when he's around me because he knows that I know. I think Mike Rawlings is a terrific person. If I could straighten out his politics, he would be beyond perfect.
What was your biggest asset or strength, in your opinion?
Just keep it simple. Work harder than the next guy. Make sure you treat people well, and don't be a jerk. It's a little different question than what is your greatest strength? We've all got strength, but what's your towering strength? And it took me a long while to figure that out for me. But somehow I had, God gave me a little bit of leadership ability and understanding how to pull people together, motivate them correctly, and get them to a place that they didn't think they probably could get.
But I got to tell you just 2 quick stories when I think about you. One time we were in New York or Connecticut or wherever it was with 10 or 12 people who were rowdy and doing the wrong things and having too much alcohol.
Right.
Everybody was being rude and everybody thought they were funny. And I'll never forget this. You said out of nowhere, and everybody listened, I don't think that's funny. That's not who I am. And that's not how I think. I just remember thinking like, wow, I didn't know that you, and I didn't know you were that confident to say it like that in the group that you did. You probably don't remember that.
I don't. I believe authenticity is very important for any leader, and you can't be authentic if you hide a contrarian point of view. Courage is very important. I'm not saying I'm courageous, but at some point in my life, I said, to hell with it. If I feel deeply something, I'm going to have to say it.
Did you have any challenges?
Oh, no question. And probably the biggest challenge was that I did love sports and football so much. And since I was a bigger guy, I was a dumb jock.
Yeah.
And with that came just the assumption that you really couldn't think through problems, that you weren't the intellectual leader that other people were. I was a little shy about expressing complicated issues, and so I shut up about that. And I didn't learn how to explain things clearly and thoroughly the way I should have in high school and college. It wasn't until working in the advertising agency that we worked at did I understand how I had to simplify things, speak slowly, not try to use fancy words, but just communicate. Someone once said, it's not about the speech you make, it's about how well you communicate to the other person. And understanding that insight, then I started thinking about communication in a totally different fashion. But that was a major personal challenge for me. And you know what I would suggest for people, okay? When you have to do that, write it on a piece of paper, not in complete sentences. You don't have to write paragraphs, but what are the 4 or 5 thoughts that you want to communicate, and make sure you communicate those things well. So many people just they fake it when they start talking. They kind of know what they want to say and they just start to bullshit. But writing it down is very important before you start to speak.
One of the things that I've said to people is that when somebody used to walk into my office, I knew whether, as for an interview, I was positively inclined, instantly neutral or negative, just by the way they walked in and presented themselves. How did you view interviewing? What did you look for? Do you agree with what I just said?
I think presence is important. I do. And I mainly don't look at the whole person. I kind of usually look at their face. I've got a model on leadership, which is a 6-point model, and I won't bore you with it, but I go through those things, and it's the psychological makeup of a person when I do it. But a lot of it comes down to 3 things that Jack Welch believed in, okay? And that was intellect, energy, and edge. And edge is the ability to make a tough call, to have a point of view that is not just pablum. It's like, and that's why I'm a tough interview, some people say, because I ask kind of complicated philosophical, psychological questions about a person. And there's not a right or wrong answer, by the way, with any of those questions I ask. I'm not asking for the right answer. I'm asking, how do they approach it? Do they have those 3 elements? Can they think through a complicated issue? Do they have an edge to them and say, he's going to make the tough call if necessary? Those sort of things.
You ran successfully a major agency. You ran Pizza Hut, totally different. One was agency, one was client side. Then you were the mayor, very good mayor for 8 years, I think, of the 8th largest city in the United States. Very simply, what were the similarities and what were the one sentence differences of those huge positions?
You know, there are more similarities than differences. And the similarities, it's all about people, okay? You've got to create a team of quality individuals around you. And it's different levels of know-how. You know, MIT is different than, you know, running a private girls' school in California, okay? It just is. But you still, for that level, you got to have quality individuals. Second is you've got to be intentional about your goals, okay? And people have got to understand what you're going to spend the time doing. And third, you've got to lead from the front. You've got to, as I said, work harder than the next guy. And if for some reason your strategies and your tactics aren't working, you've got to be a learning leader to accomplish that. So I think that is very, very similar. The different things is the degree of command and control that you have.
Of those three positions, which one was the one that you enjoyed the most?
Probably the agency.
I'll be damned.
Early in my career, it was the culture was the most exciting, was the most fun. Pizza Hut was fun because it was, I'm a competitive guy, and we had Papa John's and Domino's we were fighting, and since I'm competitive, that part was fun, but the day in and day out job wasn't that much fun.
When did you think that you were successful?
Probably about halfway through my time at Tracy Locke, you know, about 10 years into it, I started to realize that I had made a difference for the agency, and I could point to that boss that you and I both had, you know, had this concept of bringing on a piece of paper at the end of the year what you accomplished. And I think that was a good exercise to do for us all in life and in any job. And when I could actually write stuff down on that piece of paper, I realized that, okay, I think I can get a job. If they don't like me, I can go to someplace else. I've got a trade now, a way to think about things, and I can be successful.
And I say this to young people. I say, look, you got to find a partner, because 1 and 1 equals 4, and it's meant everything to me. Was it as important to you?
Yeah, no question. And it can come from a life partner like Jane and my wife's Mickey, who is wonderful to me. It can also come from a boss. It can come from a close friend. I've had my assistant for nearly 25 years. Okay. And it was critical for me at the mayor's office because, you know, it was one against the world, I felt. And so I needed a chief of staff and someone to run the office that I trusted inherently. Trust is so important. And that was critical. But really, the role that Mickey has played is sort of like what Jane has played for you, is not only being a supporter, whatever I do, she's going to end up supporting me, but being a devil's advocate too. Not letting me think that everything is just perfect. She sees it from a human point of view, and she says, "I don't understand this. What's going on?" And that's always very helpful.
Hey, Mike, are you happy?
I am very, very at peace with myself at this point in my life. That happiness is a big issue for people these days, and people believe that if I get something, or I get to the next level, or I do something, I'm going to be happy. And happiness is a state of mind that you live in. I heard this wonderful story about the Dalai Lama came over to the United States and went to a grocery store and saw, like our grocery stores, all the fruits and vegetables. And just think about all the stuff in just a common grocery store that's out there from where he came. And they asked him, what do you think? And he says, I want it all. Okay. He says, that's a natural thing. We all think that. He said, but the key to happiness is not getting what you want, but wanting what you have. And so it's a combination of being hungry and you want to change and you want to get better, and at the same time saying, I did good today. I can go to sleep. I can feel happy because of what's kind of God's given me.
Hey, I want to thank you. You're very important.
Thank you, Gary. You're a great leader, and thank you for doing this. You pass information on to young people. It's tremendous.
Thank you, Mike.
Claudia Torrescano is an incredible media icon in the Mexican American community. She, as a woman, was on TV, radio, in public relations events across this particular community with an incredible success rate. When I met Claudia, I stopped having coffee with her. I looked at her, I said, had we met 20 years ago, you and I would be partners in business. She's incredible.
My definition of marketing has always been simple. I've always said marketing is sell my stuff, much as you can and as profitably as you can.
Yes.
What is your definition of marketing?
Well, marketing to me is really the different ways that you utilize to bring traffic, to people recognize your brand, your product or service. And to me, a successful branding or successful marketing campaign is really reaching out to that particular segment or market niche, or if you reach out somebody that, a broad population, that makes it a success, right? That people remember a certain campaign, or sometimes that particular product, people remember it because of that successful ad or that successful slogan, and how it was strategically marketed. So in reality, is what are those ways? Marketing are the different ways that you try for people to know about your product or service.
Is it best to refer to a particular market as Latino or Hispanic or something else that I'm unaware of and I don't want to offend anybody?
Oh, no, I think particularly for me, Latinos are people from Latin America and are considered, even people from Mexico are considered Latinos. The term Hispanic is really more to include people from Spain that speak Spanish, because Spain is not in Latin America, so therefore they are called Hispanics. But there is a new term which is called Latinx. Latinx is really just to include everyone. Nowadays, there are some people that don't want to identify themselves under a particular gender. So they don't want to be called Latina with a letter A at the end that really implies feminine, or Latino, O at the end, that implies a masculine. So Latinx is more of a new term. I particularly don't use it, but this is more for the younger crowd. This is more of the millennial movement, where they're just trying to identify this new concept. And I feel that this will be applied going forward.
Back in my day, there were, and I know that there still are, specific agencies. Is it best to go to a specific Hispanic agency if you are a big brand or a big and work specifically with them, or go to an agency that says that they are multicultural and multi-sensitive to the different cultures?
Well, It's very important. I've worked with different agencies, big, small, and medium. It all depends on the product or service that you offer. So you have to feel comfortable with that agency in particular. So it is very important that if you're reaching multicultural or Hispanic, most of the times when you say multicultural, they most of the times include Hispanic efforts or Latino efforts or campaigns or marketing, advertising, etc., for this particular segment of the market. But I would really go with someone that has the expertise, and I would ask them to show me who are their clients, what are the campaigns, to show me some of the material and what is, how successful that campaign has been.
You have real responsibilities,
Hmm.
and you're pleasant and easy to talk to.
Hmm.
Can you tell me what your biggest challenges were?
One is when people don't know about your culture, you're coming into a new country. I was born and raised in Mexico, went to college in Mexico, and then moved to United States. And people, back in the day when I moved, I feel that this country was not as diverse or did not have, or particularly Texas or Dallas to say so. There was the population from, Mexico, or people that went to college or were bilingual or had an education was not too big. So, getting involved, becoming part of the society to me has always been important. To me, respecting others' language and culture and traditions has always been important. That's just basic manners. So to me, it was a little hard as to how was I going to introduce myself with new society. And that was at the beginning a challenge because you come to a country where you don't know anyone and you have to start from the beginning. So that took me a while. But then again, I am very appreciative and thankful to this country because I found out that here there are many organizations that have different interests and focuses that you can join those organizations, you can become a volunteer, and then all of a sudden you have a group of friends that will understand and they will meet you and learn a little bit about you.
What about education? That was your lack of or having or wanting, was that a challenge or was that
Yes, well, yes, let me share. When I came to this country, I had a bachelor's degree, and I wanted to study, I wanted to go to graduate school. And of course, when I came, I did not have a car. I didn't even know what credit meant because that was not something in Mexico. Back in the day, there was not the internet or anything that you can find it easily. You would have to use the yellow pages and all that. But one time I was in downtown, I see El Centro College, I go in and I ask, and I was told, no, your studies, your degree is not valid in this country. So you have to
wow.
start all over again. And I said, I don't think so. I had a feeling that that was not the right answer. So I said, okay, well, it's not bad. I will take some classes. And I took English, US history, French, piano, something that would still kind of give me a little time or buy-in time to find out, where universities are and the programs that they offer. So yes, that was a challenge and that kind of put me behind, right? So much of what I do nowadays is really communication and really focus to that grassroots community. So then they can learn, about the options that they have. But there's more information nowadays.
Was there an individual like a first boss, or was there somebody that went out of their way to help you, coach you, or mentor you when you were coming up?
I am glad you asked that as well. You know why? I feel that I really didn't have that many mentors. I felt that I bump into people that I met and would give advice, but I really never had a steady or a mentor that I spent a few years or a few months with that mentor. I really needed that. I really felt that I needed somebody to guide me because I was not raised in this country. So I was a newbie and I had to learn a lot. And still nowadays, I'm still learning. I continue to learn, but I feel that no, I didn't have that meant. I had several people that I bumped into on my way and I learned from them and I became a member of different organizations restaurants and clubs, etc. But I think that was my way for me to learn.
What are the two things that you go and are impressed with immediately when you interview somebody?
Well, I think definitely when they are authentic, when they are themselves. I think that, being original, being yourself, that gives me transparency, and it gives me a sense of trust. And I also like and care for people that have the intention of sharing knowledge. I am someone that I learn something and I always want to go share it, whatever it is that I learn. And that's why I enjoy doing interviews, and that's why I spent over 11 years, in Spanish radio, being a host, because I like to share the information always. I learn something, I share it.
People that work with or are around you, do they consider you to be busy or available?
Available. I think they consider me. They know that I'm busy, but they know I will be available. So
When did you think to yourself, I'm successful? Where were you? What were you doing? And what allowed you to say, you know what, I think I'm successful?
success means feeling good about yourself when you're doing something and that you are accomplishing it. So I don't know that I am at that peak, because I still have many goals that I want to reach and that I want to accomplish.
Are you happy?
Yes.
Thank you, Claudia.
Well, thank you very much. It was great talking to you, Gary.
Al Bernay doesn't just run a restaurant. He lives, breathes, and understands everything about the marketing and sale and the presence of a restaurant. He's an amazing guy, and he's got a heart of gold. Al Bernay's, in my opinion, and I used to be somebody, and people used to ask me.
You are somebody.
Yeah, thank you. Was probably the best restaurant in North Texas. So,
Oh, well, thank you.
from a size-wise, from things that you
Yes.
are allowed to tell people, dollar volume-wise, before the pandemic, what were these two stores representing? How did you
Well,
represent?
Like what we were doing in Oak Lawn, we had 6,500 square feet originally. When we took over that space, he had a poor design in the interior. He only had 150 seats. We took out some oversized columns. We took out a lot of things that just he didn't need in the space, and we added seats. We went up to 185 seats inside. Then I added what we call the garden room on the front on the Oak Lawn, and that added about 40 seats. So you have to do it, of course, when you're looking at your business plan, your kitchen can pump out enough food for probably about 275 seats, that the same size kitchen that you're paying for monthly on a payroll as maybe something that's 150. So of course it
Maximize.
makes sense if
Yeah.
your cost of doing business is the same for 180 or for 275, you're going to maximize your sales, because that's all your profit. So you have to look at what the kitchen can handle and go to that maximum.
I think when you're in the restaurant business, your definition, and I'd like to have your definition of marketing, is different from if you're selling soap or beer or soft
Yes.
drinks. So let me set this up
Okay.
and see if you
Sure.
agree or disagree. I think restaurant marketing is about, if you're going to, and my simple definition of marketing is sell my stuff
Yes.
consistently.
Yes.
But it's about food, it's about quality, it's about location, ambiance, price, and service. What am I missing?
Well, the thing is, let's take each category. First of all, there's a cycler service in the restaurant business. It starts at the valet. Then when you get the car parked, it's how the people treat you from that point on. The next would be, I'm talking about the four-wall marketing now. You know, there's other types of marketing, but I'm talking about the basic. One of the first types is a four-wall. Then you walk in and a bartender like you love Danny. Danny's there to greet you, makes you feel real comfortable. So then the whole experience, how long it takes a waiter to get to you, how well they're trained, how much knowledge you have on the menu and on the wine list, and the whole experience that you're having, and how the manager checks on you, the whole experience that you go through until you leave That's called the cycle of service. That's the part of four-wall marketing. The four-wall marketing is everything possibly you can do to not only capture your attention, because they say if you come one time and you have a bad experience, you won't come back. Most likely. You might try it, but most likely you won't. If you have a good experience and you come back after coming in on a steady basis, let's say 3 times a month for like a couple months, you're kind of hooked. And like you always taught me, you know, and we talked about this, when you capture someone's name, you kind of capture them, you know, because you told me this too, we talked about this before, because people want to feel like they found a home.
That's right.
So it's not just a restaurant, but now it's becoming like their home too, and you're part of the family type thing. So that's all real important, that type of marketing. Four-wall marketing is also, if you're doing any promotions, that's when you promote it through four-wall marketing. You do everything you possibly can to win the people over to come back. That's why if you spend, roughly you spend 3% of your total gross on marketing, but that includes comps and stuff. So you got to look at it, what's the most important thing? If Gary comes in and he's celebrating his birthday, was it better to buy him like a nice bottle of wine or take care of him or something, or just do some mass marketing that if you get it, it's very impersonal? But when Gary comes in and you do something that's not like something you're posting out there, that you get a free bottle of wine or free glass, but it's a personal thing.
That's right.
Then you feel, wow, that was nice, I want to come back. So you have so much to spend, and you got to think of the right way to spend it with comps, you know, food, alcohol comps, and that, and plus capture the new people. Capturing new people, what we try to do for local is we do a 5-mile radius around the restaurant, and we try to capture that, because most people travel. It's a neighborhood restaurants in Dallas. They have so many restaurants that if you try to do at least some marketing in a radius of a 5-mile circle, you could capture a lot more people that most likely will come to your place more often, because it's easy for them to get to. But then you have your hotels and your concierge. You got to win them over, because you have a lot of out-of-town visitors, and they're your spokesman. Very important that you take care of the concierge. You make sure that they're taken care of. You do have to give them something monetary. You know, they expect. Like my dad told me, you could go and have someone do some real nice things for you. You could just say thank you, or you could do something more than just to say thank you, and give them something that they'll remember, and they'll want to send more people to you. So you got to show your gratitude towards the concierge.
So I have a point of view on this, but I'm anxious to hear yours, because we've never really talked about it in depth about this. And I think you own this, and I have told you, I think you need to get on a tour and speak at schools.
Well, thank you.
But when people say to me, why do you like Albernays? I never say the food. I never say the food. I say I love, in my words, I love the ambiance. I love the feeling. I love the attention. I love being treated like I'm a hitter. But it's the people.
Yes, it's all your people. That I agree with you 100%. I'm only as good as my people. And in a big way. Like here, you know how Eddie treats you,
Oh, yeah.
and everybody else.
We
and
need to
Dave-
talk. He's got some
Yeah,
issues.
yeah. But you know, if you have the right people and they stay with you, that's what is so important, because they get a following. All of them. The servers get a following. Everybody gets a following, and it's so important. When you lose people, you lose that following. A lot of times, if they go, they might take the customer with them to their new
Absolutely.
place. So it's very important that you take care of people and get the right people up front.
So when you interview,
Yes.
this is I've asked several people this, and I'm curious to hear what do you look for? What makes your interviewing technique different from anybody else?
Well, you know, Herb Kelleher, he told me that the number one thing he looked for, which I adopted, was a personality and their desire to please people. Because, like he said, you can always teach people and train people to do the job you want them to do a certain way. But if they come in with a sour attitude, or they don't have the bubbly personality, or they don't have that charm to make you feel comfortable, then you're just wasting your time. So what I look for, first of all, is how the person, you know, makes me feel. If makes me feel comfortable, if they smile, if they feel, you know, like the way I look at it, if they're real nervous coming in, people say, oh, it's just their first time. Well, you have to look at it like every table's going to be a first time.
That's right.
So if they're nervous with me, it's how they're going to be comfortable with people in general.
How important is it that you have a good partner in life, a spouse? And then what is your opinion of your spouse working with you in the business?
Well, definitely, my wife helped design this restaurant and the other restaurant. She did a lot of work on that. And to be honest with you, I bounce things off her all the time as far as, man, it's a lot of stress and it's a lot of her opinions and everything else. So I think without having someone to really talk to and confide in and really ask like their opinion, which I respect hers a lot, I think that it would be really hard to run a business like this, do it on your own, because you know, not everybody has all the answers and everything. And it's nice to have somebody tell you the truth. I didn't believe in myself. She said, you could do it. You've been doing it for the Palm all these years. You could do it. But without that, I probably would still be at the Palm. And nothing wrong with that. It's just that I wouldn't have been pushed. This thing here just takes a lot of time. And when you're really consumed in the business, you are going to go home and talk about it all the time. You are going to get up in the middle of the night.
That's right.
And you're going to think about it. So you need someone willing to put up with all that and help you get through it.
When did you know you were successful?
Well, this is the thing in this business. You have to do it daily.
Yeah.
So it keeps you humble, and it doesn't make you feel ever like you really have it made. And I know it's strange, but because there's so many talented people, and if you don't stay on top of it and you're not innovating all the time and creating a new and like just recreating yourself constantly, if you don't do that, you fade off. Play the underdog. Don't play like you're on top of the hill and you waiting for someone to knock you off of it. Play like they're on top of the hill and you're the underdog, and you got to get there and you got to get them off the top of the hill. So you got to constantly be thinking of new things to do, create new ideas for the menu, the restaurant, the people, and you have to look at the business through other people's eyes.
I got one more thing. You ready?
Yeah.
I consider you to be one of my best friends.
I consider you to be one of my best friends.
And
too.
thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure.